By the last third of the 15th century, Portuguese success was already spanning rivalry and competition, especially on the part of Spain. In 1492, when Columbus approached the Spanish monarchs, the crown of Castile and Aragon, Ferdinand and Isabella, they were influenced by their own need for a source of gold to rival Portugal's African bonanza and challenge their dominance of the African coast and the gold trade. But they also had a sense of destiny and mission built on their own successful reconquest of their territory. Columbus was an Italian from Genoa. He had moved to Lisbon and married into a noble family active in the trade in the Atlantic islands. He had worked as a sugar buyer. He was familiar with the waters around North Africa. And when he went to the monarchs of Spain, he was looking for sponsorship specifically for a westward voyage to Asia. The closest we can get to Columbus's mental picture of the world is this globe from 1492, significantly enough. And if you take a look at it, you can see that it shows an empty ocean between Europe and Asia, no continent of North America or South America at all. Columbus, in fact, was part of a group of people who believed the world to be smaller than it was usually assumed to be. And it was this that to him made a sea journey to China seem possible. He estimated that such a journey would be about 1,500 miles across the ocean, with the island of Japan somewhere in between. You can see Japan on that globe marked as Chipangu. Columbus focused on the Spanish courts because Genoese bankers were influential there and he had all kinds of contacts, but also because he figured he needed to leave from the Canary Islands, and that committed him to Castile. He left with a commission from the crown referring to the possession of mainlands and islands in the ocean, and a letter vaguely addressed to the Prince of Unknown Lands. Columbus's strategy was as basic as it comes. He sailed directly west until he hit something. And in fact, he succeeded where other people had failed because he started further south and he caught northeasterly winds that blew him directly into the Caribbean islands. Nobody really knows what island it was in the Caribbean that Columbus landed on his first voyage. It might have been the Bahamas, but we do know that he mapped Cuba and Hispaniola on that first voyage, Hispaniola being modern-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And we know that on his second voyage, he went on to map the Antilles and Jamaica, and later most of the Caribbean and parts of the coast of the American mainland. Columbus remained convinced that he had hit lands close to or contiguous with Asia. And in fact, this was a perspective not undermined until Magellan's later voyage to the Pacific revealed just how vast the globe was, as it turned out, it was 1/3 larger, not 1/3 smaller than previous estimates. Columbus described the people of the Caribbean as wonderfully pliable. This could not have been more untrue, as the later reports of Las Casas and others would make clear. Further conquests in the Americas came very quickly after 1492, and again they were the work of Portugal and Spain. In 1500, the Portuguese Cabral made landfall in Brazil, and that huge development, like others, came from his mastery of the wind and ocean current systems of the Atlantic. This was a fortuitous discovery when his ship got caught up in the western currents and the winds blew him directly into the coast of Brazil. Like so many others, Cabral was trying to find the shortest route to the Indies. He left from the Cape Verdes, and that was how he got caught up in the wind and ocean currents. It was not long after that that the Spanish were in Mexico. Hernan Cortes, working for the Crown of Spain, followed rumors of wealth into contact with the Mexica. It was a contact quickly followed by a brutal war of conquest and a victory with the aid of a large native army. Events in Mexico put Europeans in contact with one of the world's most complex and populous civilizations. And in fact, the idea of Indians as natural slaves, which had started to evolve after Columbus was in the Caribbean, had to be abandoned in the face of the knowledge of this Mexica people. The same was pretty much true in Peru, when Francisco Pizarro, working in direct imitation of Cortes, climbed into the Inca highlands and made contact with another people in a highly complex civilization. As in Mexico, that contact was also quickly followed by a brutal war of conquest. The discovery of two gold-rich civilizations in such a short span of time fueled dreams of El Dorado. And it also meant that the Spanish set the standard, quite literally the gold standard, of European colonization in the New World. By the 1550s, the most populous regions of the Americas had already been claimed for Spain, and all the future capitals and colonial centers had been founded. With justifiable pride, the Spanish called the discovery of the Indies the greatest event since the creation of the world, apart from the incarnation and death of the Creator himself. The dominance of the Iberian powers was significant and long-lasting. Other Europeans, the English, the French, the Dutch, were all latecomers in this imperial game, and they were not much involved at all until the 17th century. Nor was mainland North America much a part of the picture. There had been various expeditions and failed colonies in North America in the 16th century, and the Spanish had done some significant inland exploration. But it was not until the 1520s that it was generally accepted that mainland North America, that the east coast of North America was not in fact the eastern coast of Asia. And it was only later, after 2 centuries of Spanish and Portuguese dominance, that other Europeans managed to establish colonies in the Americas. The French finally got some colonies in the 17th century, Martinique and Guadeloupe by the 1630s, Saint-Domingue by the 1660s. And much the same was true of the English. They had been working on the Northwest Passage since the 1570s, trying to find a passage to Asia through the icy waters of the northern Atlantic around Hudson's Bay. But despite their pretensions, they had no real presence in the Americas until 1607, when they got Virginia, which after all was nobody's idea of an imperial prize. And in the 1620s, they got Barbados, and the 1660s, Jamaica, which they captured from Spain. So it was really the mid-17th century before the English had any imperial presence in the Americas worth talking about. And indeed, for most of that time, North America was seen mostly as an obstacle on the way to the east. And it was only very gradually that any idea emerged that these colonies could be made valuable in and of themselves. And in fact, to make them valuable, it would take a new colonial model. There was nothing there that promised England or France the riches already fallen to Spain. By that point, indeed long before, the Spanish were already claiming world dominance, as you can see in this spectacular image of Europe shaped in the figure of a queen with Hispania as its crowned and supreme head. Spain's was a dominance widely recognized and envied, and it set off a new round of imitation and rivalry between world powers that extended as far as the Ottoman court in Constantinople.